right, things have escalated.
It's hard when you're waiting that first, week, 10 days for something to come up. Hello everyone, welcome back to another vlog. Today is seed starting day. I have an update about the rack to show you first.
In my last video, I mentioned that we were going to get a sunshade to block the worst of the light so that nobody could stare directly at the lights. Well, we have a new plan. One of my friends told me that we could actually move our rack into our unheated, non-climate controlled garage as long as we also had heat mats. I didn't want to buy heat mats originally, just because we bought so much this year. But after talking to my husband about it, he said, yeah, if we could go ahead and move the racks into the garage now, it would be a worthy investment. So we have picked up 2 heat mats to start with. They're kind of weird dimensions. I could not find one that would fit our shelf. The ones that would have been wide enough were also going to be too long, and we weren't sure just how bendable they are. Maybe we'll get a different dimension for one of the other shelves because it does look like they're pretty flexible. But we decided to just go with 2 of these for now. So our tray will hang over it just a little bit. And hopefully that doesn't affect germination and heat too much, because they will also be under a light and in sort of a greenhouse container. But we will see. So that is the current plan. My husband's in the garage making space right now for the rack, and we are going to start these seeds. The theme of today is peppers. So we have several different varieties here. We've got red bell peppers, and then we have some other fun peppers to try, the serranos, jalapenos, habaneros, and these anchos. If I have time, I would like to take these out and try to start these in a milk jug. I want to see if I can winter sow onions. Most of these need to be started 10 weeks before the last frost, I believe. Yeah, 8 to 10 weeks. We are estimating at the 10-week mark, and I'm also not using last frost. I am using Mother's Day because a lot of people conventionally recommend that you should wait until Mother's Day to put anything in your garden, just to be extra sure and not stunt your plants at all. So that's what I'm going to do this year. Maybe I'll do it differently next year, but so I'm using Mother's Day as my last frost. So if my numbers seem way off for you other gardeners, that's why. We are in zone 7A otherwise. So I think our last frost would have been maybe April 28th, if I remember correctly. Anyway, the other thing I'm going to start is celery. Now celery, I didn't realize it says 8 to 12 weeks before last frost. So these could have already been started, but I guess we're still in that window. So we're going to start those. And I'm also going to try some scallions in here. I also started some scallions out in our winter sown jugs, just as an experiment. So that's where we're at. I also have all of my tags ready. I'm going to tag every single container just this year because I get interrupted a lot when I'm working, and so I can totally see myself moving containers around, and then I get interrupted by a kid, and I don't want to have to be worried about remembering where I left off and whatnot. So everything is going to get a label. For my potting mix, I am using this Vermont compost. This is the Fort V. I think that's the name of it. There's a lot of different options on their website. And this was kind of expensive in my opinion. I think it was $37 for this bag. I got it on Amazon and I had to wait a couple weeks for it to ship. So not exactly an easy thing to get, but I've seen a lot of people start seeds with it. So I'm just going to go with what I've heard works. And then maybe next year I will play with making my own mix. You know, I've heard that you can just do like soil and compost and mushroom compost or something like that. So many different things, different ways to do it. But this is the way we are going to do it this year. So I'm just gonna get some of this into a bowl. I'm gonna get it just a little bit wet, and we're gonna start filling some pots. These filled. I did moisten the soil just a bit, and I didn't want it to be, sticking together and make big clumps, but I've done my best here to guess at what the right moisture level is. And the only thing I don't like about these trays, I mentioned this before, is you can see at the bottom, they've got these big grooves. So when you put your pots in here, they're kind of all wonky, and I'm not a big fan of that. So if I like this method, I think what I'm going to do is look for lids for the bootstrap trays that I already have and try to do basically the same thing, but with some nicer trays, because they're all kind of wonky in there.
As I mentioned before, I am going to put a label in every single pot. The pots did not make perfect rows, and so some varieties are in 2 different trays, and I just really wanted everything clearly labeled. Like I mentioned, I have little kids, and I think part of being a mom is understanding what sorts of things could bother you. And I know that if I am moving these little pots around trying to keep track of what variety is what, and my kids need something, I don't want to be worried about wondering where I left off. So everything has a label. The first thing I'm planting today is going to be the big red bell pepper, and I really liked the MI Gardener seed packets because they have so much information on the back. And it says to just plant it a 1/4 inch deep. So my strategy was to take a chopstick and mark a 1/4 inch on it. And at first I was just trying to poke holes and then put the seed in the hole. However, that actually took a long time because then you had to be really precise dropping the seeds in the hole. And so what I decided to do next was just set the seeds on top of the soil, and then I would push them down a 1/4 inch with the chopstick. And that was a much more efficient process. I'm also doing 2 seeds per pot, just hoping to improve germination rates. And then I will go through and thin them and pull out the weak one if 2 of them come up. I also decided to put cinnamon on the top. I have read that cinnamon can help with gnat control. And then I've also read that as a bonus, it can stimulate root production. I don't know how true that is, but I figured it couldn't hurt. And I did look up to see if it could hurt the plants, and everything said it should be fine. So worst case, this just does nothing.
All right, so here is our setup out here in the garage. My husband decided to turn the heat mats long ways, I guess. And then how do they work?
So you plug this piece in, and then the heat mat is actually plugged into this thing, and it's whatever this is, the module or remote or something. You control what temperature it's set to, and there's a probe connected to it, and I have the probe in one of the middle plants for each of these, and that temperature says what that probe is reading, but I have it set to 80 degrees, so in theory this thing should be telling the mat to get whatever the probe is up to 80 degrees. So right now I have it set up to where the lights are hopefully going to keep it from getting too cold as this heats up. It says it takes up to 5 hours, so it's been like 2 or 3 hours so far.
So jury's out. I don't think it'll hurt the seeds if they get cold tonight. I think, right? I mean, nothing has germinated. They're just in there. So if this doesn't work, we will try something else tomorrow. All right, things have definitely escalated a little bit. We ended up buying a VivoSun tent to put our seedlings in because we were having a really hard time getting everything to come up to 80 degrees. It is a pretty cool contraption, and you can see our rack ended up having to go in diagonal. They are both 48 inches long. So the tent was 48 inches and the rack was 48 inches. And I did my mom math and I said, yeah, that'll work. But in reality, it was a little kind of a tight squeeze. So here we are. We have this rack in here. So now with the heat mats, oh, you can't really see it. The numbers are jumping. It's 78.9 and 77.5. So this has been pretty neat. We figured that even if it didn't work out here, this would help us block the light inside if we wanted to move it inside. But I think this is going to work out here now that we've got this. So much for being frugal with our setup this year, but we won't have to pay for it again, at least. Another thing I have been unhappy with, we're learning all the lessons, is these. Okay, do you see how there's this edge here? When you go to close this, it gets caught on other plants. So if you make one side fit right, you know, then the other side over here is caught on the containers. So this is really not actually that great of an idea. This has been kind of a pain. So we ended up ordering the lids from Bootstrap Farmer, and as soon as those come in, we are going to switch these out for the Bootstrap Farmer trays. So I guess you could say we are learning all of the lessons the hard way. I think this is where I'm going to end this video. I will update you all when we have germination. I'm probably going to start the tomatoes this weekend as well. Those lids should be in here this weekend so we can get a second row growing. And yeah, hopefully we start getting some seed starts in here and this isn't all just a giant waste. I'm sure it's not a giant waste, but it's hard when you're waiting that first, week, 10 days for something to come up. But I guess the good thing is next year we will have all of this. We will even have a lot of the seeds. So next year the only input should be our potting mix, whatever we decide to do with that. And hopefully some of that we are making our compost, So, all right, well, I will see you all in the next video and thank you for joining. Bye-bye.